Hey everyone, it's me, Ari Dawson Rashid. I'm your anthropologist and sociologist. Listen, when someone goes missing, it can be two things. Either someone, I'm talking about when they're an adult, either they started a new life somewhere else and they just ghosted everyone in the neighborhood. That can be an option. But in that case, at least the individual is still alive. And there is a possibility of reconciliation with the people they've ghosted. But it could also be that someone was taken out. They were kidnapped and eventually murdered. Now, when someone goes missing, it causes a disruption in the community. Because think about it. That individual that went missing had a job. Maybe they were a cashier or a cash register at a supermarket. Or they may have been a lawyer working somewhere or a high school teacher. They may have been someone's spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, or maybe they were a police officer or a nurse. Okay, even if they were a loner and living in their mom's basement, they still had some function in the community. So disruption occurs. And now, when a disruption occurs, people want to fill it up. There's one thing people in the world cannot stand, and that's ongoing disruption. So, if there's ongoing disruption, people are looking for replacements. And look, if you work at a job, you can't expect the whole company or corporation to be on a standstill. Why? Because the other employees do need to pay rent, they need to pay bills, so the company has to continue to function. So they will replace you. Or if people knew you, let's say you were engaged, about to get married, you can't expect an individual you're about to get married to wait for you for decades and maybe you'll never come back and their whole life goes by. No. So life will continue when someone goes missing. It's not cruel, it's just a fact. Nevertheless, a disruption happened. And when the disruption happened, it was the obligation and responsibility of the community to admit the disruption and to demand answers. What happened? Now, there are times someone goes missing and the community does exactly that. They demand answers. And often, very quickly, answers will come. When the community really insists on getting answers, most likely, there may be some exceptions when it does happen, but most likely they will get their answers. When you have a whole public upset about the matter and they won't shut their mouth about it, eventually the truth will come out. It may not come out in a pleasant way, but it will come out. So understand this. When someone goes missing and people remain silent about it, it is because they are in agreement with the individual going missing. Simple as that. Look, if 10,000 people live in a small town, you don't know every 10,000 individual. But you don't have to know every 10,000 individuals for you to be concerned with your environment. Someone going missing, so it's a disruption. And that someone who goes missing is someone's son or someone's daughter, someone's parent, someone's loved one. But you also need to remember that individual can also be someone's enemy. And that's often something we don't want to talk about. Let's say a young woman goes missing in her early 20s. And let's say her family members are desperate for answers. And years later, they make a documentary about it, either for national TV or in these days, you have people making YouTube documentaries about it. And there are many quality YouTube documentaries out there. You can check them out. But one thing that I often don't see in those documentaries is that the community as a whole demanded answers. Now, there are cases where the whole community joined on the search effort and they want answers. That happened. That happens from time to time. But often you only see the close relatives or a few friends pushing for the case. My question is, what are all these other people doing? Why are they not interested? Why are they okay with this? Could it not be that the individual who went missing, in this case, this young lady, that she was an annoyance to the people? Could it be that people secretly want her gone and now they got what they wanted? In this case, they did not get their hands dirty killing her because they don't want to go to prison, they don't want to have a criminal record. They just want to be left alone. And they perceived her as an annoyance that disrupted their ease. So they wanted her gone. And they were murmuring, complaining about her. They were generating negativity against her. There was negativity built up against her in the Earth's atmosphere. And as you know, when negativity is built up against you spiritually, eventually it will manifest materially. And in this case, there may have been a reprobate, a violent reprobate nearby, who was powered with this negativity, and they did the dirty job against the woman. In any case, the people got what they wanted. She's gone. Now, was she really the cause of their problems? No. Most likely not. But when people don't want to face themselves, don't want to look at themselves and own up to themselves, they will make someone else the problem. And they will attack that someone else just to get relief. So they don't have to look at themselves. And that often happens in the world. So I want you to consider this. The people that go missing, they were not always beloved. And here's another thing. Sometimes you also have bad people going missing. Criminals, child molesters, outlaws, or sometimes even narcissists go missing. So I'm not saying that when someone goes missing, automatically we have to assume the worst of them. Absolutely not. But just understand, if someone goes missing and they were not an evildoer, they were not someone that invested in evil, that means that the population was invested in evil and they didn't want this individual around to disrupt their ease. They want to sin at peace and nobody calls them out on it. A few days ago, me and a fellow believer were walking through Rotterdam. And we just visited places, we just walked by places. And at some point, we walked by my old neighborhood where I grew up in for a portion of my youth. From ages 8 till 15, I lived in that neighborhood. I moved away in 2006 from the neighborhood, if I'm correct, 2006. I was just 15 years old. Being back at that place is almost 18 years ago. Just a few weeks away from being 18 years ago that I left that place. Back then in 2006. And me and the brothers walked around. I saw the old primary school I attended. Oh, and by the way, by the time I left that neighborhood, I was not in primary school anymore. I was right in high school. But anyway, we walked by the old primary school, the old shops. Some of the shops were still there. Others were replaced. And a lot of the buildings were about to be demolished because they wanted to gentrify neighborhoods. The nursing home was still there. I even walked by the old address I used to live back in the day. And I did not experience, let me say like this. It wasn't all black and dark, but I experienced some horrible times in that neighborhood while growing up. It was a haunted place. Let's be real about it. But anyway, me and the fellow believer walked by, and the fellow believer told me, Rashid, I'm doing a spiritual inquiry on this place, and I feel like people that lived here back in the day when you were here, those grown-ups, many of them were into self-pity. That's why they couldn't care less what was going on with the youth. That's why they were so neglectful. I thought, okay, let me explain it. But one thing I want to point out is that while walking there, I even saw the old house me, my mom, and my siblings used to live in. It's now occupied by other people. The building's still there. The fences changed a little bit. Let me tell you, when you walk into that neighborhood now, 2024, there is no trace that I even lived there, and there's no trace none of those other people lived there, even were there. All those people back then were neglectful and harmful. There's no trace of them anymore. It's like they were never there. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because I want you to think with me. I moved out of the neighborhood 18 years ago. I'm about to turn 33 this year, on the 17th of August. 18 years. There are people who've been missing for longer than 18 years. Again, time does not stand still. Day and night continue, seasons continue, years continue. So think about the following. If you would end up missing today, what effort would people make for you to find out what happened to you? And just understand, those people, when the years go by, they get married, they get divorced, some of them pass away, some of them end up in prison, some are released from prison, so things continue. So let's say you would go missing today, and a few months later, you're found again. In that case, you can still be reintegrated in how things were. But if you've been gone for more than a year, I'm telling you, people already replace you. I just want you to consider this. If you've been gone for more than a year, people already replace you. Because there's one thing the public cannot handle, and that is ongoing disruption. So, apart from going missing, I want you to consider the following also. If you have gone through difficulties, struggles, and through hardships, if you've been oppressed, if whatever you've gone through, you got out of it now, you passed through it, you survived, you recovered. What were all those other people doing? Because I know for sure, if you were suspected of committing a crime, whether it was shoplifting, or whether it was fraud or whatever, or if you did anything people couldn't stand, like slander or whatever, they would sue you in a court of law and you'd go to prison, or you have to pay the fine. People would make effort then. How come you went through all that difficulty and a lot of people know where to be found? Let me tell you what happened. They were either the reason why you went through all the difficulty, so they're the ones invested against you, or they just bailed out. They ghosted you and they replace you with other people. In this case, you never really mattered to them. They replace you with someone else who could contribute to their ease. They were all about relief all the time. So that's why when the heat was on you, they just left. They just ghosted you. Others were around and they were invested in keeping you in the heat so that the heat will be off of them. I want this to get through to you. Because too often, believers give too much consideration to other people. No, I'm not saying that we should be insensitive, narcissistic, selfish, and without regard towards others. We shouldn't do that. That will only get us into unnecessary trouble. But just know, just because you are of quality considering other people does not guarantee that they'll be of quality considering you. And I'm telling you straight up, this may not be a fact you want to hear, but a lot of people would easily replace you. Why? Because they never actually valued you to begin with. First of all, if people don't value themselves properly, how can you expect them to value you? Again, let me say it one more time. If people don't properly value themselves, how can you expect them to properly value you? And a lot of you all were listening to this. Well, not all of you. If it doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply to you. But many of you were listening to this. You are around people who don't even properly value themselves. How can they value you? And even if they value you, they're just human beings just like you. They're not God. They can't save you, nor redeem you, nor rescue you. What I'm saying is, a lot of you believers are way too considerate of people who would develop amnesia the moment you would disappear. As a matter of fact, some of you may disappear, and people won't even notice you disappeared until maybe months or years later. Because they're so distracted by the 9 to 5 and by other dramas in daily life. Look, just like me and a fellow believer walked by my old neighborhood, and the neighborhood kind of looks still the same. Some of the buildings have been broken down and replaced by a new construction, and some buildings will be demolished. But guess what? There's no trace left of the people that live there. And a lot of people live there likely have passed away by now. But some of them were of age also. The children were there, including me, are now grown-ups. We have families, we have careers. Some end up in prison, some turned criminal, others didn't. Some passed away tragically early on. That's sad. But anyway, things moved on. For me, that neighborhood is just a reference, a historical reference, a reference to the past. That's all it is. I have no investment with it. And a lot of you over here listen to me. Some of you are still invested in historical places. Some of you are still invested in historical relationships. Look, let's say you were married for 10 years or 20 years and divorce happened. Those are years of your life you'll never get back. That individual you divorced is now likely married to someone else, or they're sexually involved with someone else. Or maybe they passed away but now, or they're in prison, I don't know. But anyway, you need to accept that relationship has run its course. It's over. So now you need to realize, okay, I need to be open to someone else. You can't go back in time and become younger again and do over all those years. You have to process the failure of the marriage and move on. But some of you are still stuck. Or maybe it's not a previous marriage, maybe it's a previous job. Maybe you were fired from a job you really liked. And even though you don't think about your previous job anymore consciously, even though you don't think about your old colleagues anymore, you haven't gotten over that shock of suddenly being fired. So when you got other jobs, you're always hyper cautious. And you being so hyper cautious led to you having a burnout because you overworked yourself. You're still invested in a historical place. Now, don't get me wrong. If there's a building, like an old school building, or maybe a monument that means a lot to a lot of people, I have no problem with old buildings being preserved, because old buildings will be cultural heritage over time. Old buildings will be cultural heritage. So there's nothing wrong with preserving old buildings. There's nothing wrong with preserving old neighborhoods. There's nothing wrong with preserving old items, because they may end up in a museum or they may become vintage over time, worth a lot. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But just understand, you live today. There are historical references, whether it's place or people. If they are historical references, that's all they are. Look, your ex-wife or ex-husband or ex-partner you used to be with, they are a historical reference onto you, but they're not relevant to you now. I'm not saying they're not important. As a human being, they have importance, of course. They have importance, but when it comes to you and your daily life, they're not relevant. Let's say during high school, you had this teacher that really inspired you, that made you feel at home. Maybe by now the teacher passed away. You don't know. Or maybe the teacher's in a nurse home now. What I'm saying is that that teacher was a good influence to you. So be inspired by that. Be inspired by that history. But guess what? He or she is still an historical reference. And let me tell you, you eventually will become a historical reference to a lot of people. Because remember, our bodies are mortal. So one day our body will expire. There's going to be a day you'll pass away. It will happen. As a matter of fact, all our bodies are mortal. Only those who are still alive when Jesus Christ returns will not face physical death, the first physical death. They'll just have themselves transformed into immortal body. They don't have their bodies transformed into immortal bodies at the spot. But for those who will not be still alive when Christ comes back, and we don't know when Christ comes back, it's none of our concern. It will happen. But for most of us, at some point we'll pass away. And you will be a historical reference to everyone who will still be alive. For some people, during this lifetime, you will become a historical reference. Why? Because the link breaks. For example, maybe people you used to go to college with, or maybe people you used to work with at the previous job. You are a historical reference to them. It doesn't mean you passed away. It doesn't mean that they passed away. It simply means that even though you're both alive, you're both active in different areas, so you're both of importance, but to each other you're not that relevant. You will become a historical reference to people at some point. My thing is, become and be a historical reference that's worth it. Look, people say life goes on. This is what's in the world. It's kind of true. But what I'm going to say is that life is here right now. You need to be active here right now. You need to pause for a moment and reflect and process things. I'm not saying pause like stop doing your daily chores, stop going to work and all of that. I'm not telling you to do that, because you need to remain active in life. You need to pay bills. You need to, maintain social relationships, all of that. Just understand. If you would disappear today, most people will forget about you. Not all people. There will be people remembering you, loved ones, all of that. And there will be strangers in the future that will hear about your case and will think, hey, what happened to this individual? What happened? So there will be strangers, some not even born yet, that will think about you. But for right now, the majority of the people you're involved with, if you disappear today, the disruption, if you don't reappear very quickly, the disruption will be too much. They'll just replace you. They will. Consider people around you. Absolutely. That's what we ought to do. As far as it depends on you, be at peace with other people. On the other hand, don't go too far that you walk on eggshells, not upset the public. Because that same public, if they can't get out of you what they want, if you become what they require or what they need at the moment, they'll drop you like it's hot. They'll drop you like hot potato. And if you upset them by calling things out, they'll even turn on you to get you in prison, get you homeless, or to get you killed. Or damaged in any other way. Agree with Christ. Serve Christ. And if someone disappears from you, whether they left by their own accord, because they didn't perceive, because they so-called outgrew you, or they so-called found better people, let them go. If they want to escape, and they found other people to escape to, guess what? Those people would have become a burden to you anyway, hindering you. But if they disappeared from you because Heavenly Father removed them, guess what? That's for you to continue. Because they may have another purpose from God here on earth, or it can be that they would have become a hindrance to your purpose. So just keep going. And look, remember, when you were born by yourself. When you will die by yourself. When you'll be resurrected by Christ, you'll be resurrected by yourself. You're not resurrecting yourself, but it's by yourself you'll be resurrected. So make sure you are in agreement with Christ. Other people around matter, especially people you're involved with, but just remember, at the end of the day, it's the Father's guidance that you need. Because He is the one who will resurrect you. No one else, not even yourself. Well, that's it for now. Keep in agreement with Christ and be at peace.